Hello everyone, this is Jim Lucy, Editor-in-Chief for Electrical Wholesaling and Electrical Marketing with the March 6, 2023 edition of the Today's Electrical Economy podcast series sponsored by Champion Fiberglass. The company began producing epoxy fiberglass conduit and fittings in 1908 and in 1909 developed the first conduit from epoxy resins that had flame resistance and low smoke characteristics. This met the most stringent codes and specifications. Today's podcast will highlight some of the large construction projects that broke ground or entered the planning stage over the past 2 months, and we'll check out the 200,022 preliminary year-end building permit data at the metro level to see which areas are still building at a high rate. We'll also check out some weekly economic indicators that can give you a sense of where the U.S. economy and the electrical market may be headed in the short term. These 5 weekly indicators are initial unemployment claims at the state level, rail freight car traffic, the Baker Hughes rig count, oil prices, and copper prices. Our thanks again to Champion Fiberglass for sponsoring the Today's Electrical Economy series of podcasts for 2023. For the week ending February the 25th, the advanced figure for seasonally adjusted initial unemployment claims was 190,000. That's a decrease of 2,000 from the previous week's unrevised level of 192,000. The 4-week moving average was 193,000, and that's an increase of 1,750 from the previous week's unrevised average of 191,250. The U.S. unemployment rate for the month of January is 3.4%. The February rate should be coming this week, I believe. The following 10 states had the largest decreases in unemployment claims through the week of February 25th. We had 5 states with some fairly big decreases in claims, and then the other 5 states were fairly small. Kentucky checked in with the largest change in unemployment claims with a decrease of 1,656. California had 2,353. Texas came in at 1,562. Ohio came in at 1,326. And Michigan came in at 1,082. Under 1,000 in claims chains were Oklahoma, minus 664. Louisiana down 652, Alabama down 499, New York down in claims 411, and North Carolina down 384 claims. These 5 states had the biggest increases in unemployment claims for the weekend in February 25th. We had 2 states with claims over 1,000, and the other 3 were under 1,000. Massachusetts had a fairly significant increase with an increase in claims of 4,385. Rhode Island came in at 1,212. Under 1,000 in their claims increases were New Jersey up 614, Arkansas up 564, and the District of Columbia up 465. One of the more interesting leading economic indicators for the overall economy is freight rail traffic. It's a measure of the amount of raw materials and finished goods being shipped by rail. The best source for this data is the American Association of Railroads, which publishes data weekly at www.aar.org. Total U.S. weekly rail traffic for the week ending February 25th was 459,233 carloads and intermodal units. That's down 5.9% compared with the same week last year. Combined U.S. carloads and intermodal units for the whole month of February was 1,849,723, and that's down year over year 5.2%, or 101,452 carloads and intermodal units from February 2022. Total combined U.S. traffic for the first weeks of 2023 was 3,693,347 carloads and intermodal units, and that's a decrease of 4.2% compared to last year. So as you can see, in the early going in 2023, we're seeing some low single-digit decreases in rail traffic. In the press release accompanying the data, AAR Senior Vice President John T. Gray had some comments on the specific traffic trends in individual categories for the month of February. He said, coal and chemical and grain together account for more than 1/2 of all non-intermodal U.S. rail volume. When all 3 are down, like they were in February, it's very hard for total carloads not to be down too. On the positive side, several commodities, including crushed stone and sand, petroleum products, steel products, grain mill, and food products, showed some very strong performances. If you track the oil market, you're probably familiar with the Baker Hughes rig count, which tracks the oil and gas rigs that are operating. The data is available by state, by basin, and nationally at www.rigcount.bakerhughes.com. This slide gives you an idea of the largest oil and gas deposits. It really gives you a good sense of just how many of the large oil plays are in Texas and Oklahoma, and how big an area the Marcellus gas region covers in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and parts of West Virginia. As you can see in chart, the nation's largest basin, the Permian Basin in Texas, lost 4 rigs during the week ending March 3rd. However, the drilling activity in this basin is still up 13% for last year, with 39 more rigs in operation. None of the other individual basins had any notable change in activity for the week ending March 3rd. On a national basis, there's still 99 more rigs operating than this time last year, which is good for an impressive 15% increase. The current price of WTI crude oil as of March the 3rd is $77.83 per barrel, according to macrotrends.net. The average price of WTI per barrel for so far in 2023 is $77.60. Economists like to call copper pricing Dr. Copper because it's a leading economic indicator for future activity since copper is used in so many industries. The construction industry is among the leading markets for copper because of its use of wire and cable and copper plumbing pipe. COMEX copper prices as of March the 6th is $4.07 per pound. They've gone up about 32 cents per pound since the beginning of January. The preliminary data is in for building permits at the Metropolitan Statistical Area, or MSA level. It's worth taking a look at because despite the national slowdown, there are still some metros that should be pretty busy this year. Let's take a look at them. The first thing that becomes immediately apparent in the data is how consolidated the overall activity is on both the single-family and multifamily level. In the single-family segment, the top 25 markets accounted for 47% of all permits, and the top 50 markets accounted for 63% of all permits. In the multifamily segment, the top 25 markets accounted for 44% of all permits. The top 50 markets, they accounted for 69% of all multifamily permits. Now let's take a look at the largest metropolitan area statistical areas for single-family permits. Although all of the top 10 markets had declines year over year in 2022, the number of single-family permits that each market had in 2022 is still impressive. The top 10 markets were the Houston Metro, the Dallas-Fort Worth, Arlington Metro, the Phoenix Metropolitan Area, the Atlanta Metropolitan Area, Austin, Charlotte Metropolitan Area, Orlando, Nashville, Jacksonville, and the New York City metropolitan area, which stretches all the way through Long Island, a bit of upstate New York, and on in through New Jersey and Pennsylvania. One thing that amazed me is when I took a look at the builders in the 3 Texas markets ranked in the top 10 pulled in a crazy number of combined permits, 111,331, which I think is incredible. Houston had 47,633 permits by itself. Dallas was also over 40,000 with 43,409. Austin had over 20,000 permits. You throw in San Antonio, which was a little bit further down the list, they had 10,000 permits. That's a huge amount of single permit activity. And these 4 Texas markets together had the most single family permits than any other state except for Florida, which in total had 133,750 single family permits for 2022. You'll notice some familiar metros in the listing of the largest markets for multifamily permits. Houston and Dallas are near the top of the list, as are Austin and Atlanta. The other markets were, and at the top of the list, the New York metropolitan area with over 44,000 permits. We mentioned Dallas and Houston. Austin, we mentioned the Washington, D.C. metro. We also had the Atlanta, which we previously mentioned. You had the Los Angeles metropolitan area, Phoenix, Seattle, and Minneapolis. The one thing that I find while updating our database of the largest construction projects of more than $100 million in total value is that the sheer size of these construction projects sometimes obscure the trends in the overall market. While many construction economists expect the overall non-residential construction market to decline in 2023, I had no problem finding dozens of large projects that either broke ground or entered the planning stage over the last 3 months that were in total for over $100 million in total construction value. Let's take a look at these largest projects, as well as some of the categories where the construction activity still appears to be quite strong. Here's 10 large projects that entered the pipeline during the past few months that were over $1 billion in total estimated value. There's a very large passenger rail project being considered between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. It's Brightline West 218-mile high-speed train that's going to go from the Las Vegas to just outside the Los Angeles metro. This one is interesting in part because Brightline also has done a major passenger rail high-speed line in Florida as well. This is not a little ways from actually breaking ground, I believe, but there is some update information at www.sfgate.com. We had a large airport project, JFK and other terminal breaking ground, $4.2 billion total construction value. As we've reported quite a bit on these podcasts, there were a number of EV plants breaking ground all over the country. The most recent is the news that the plant, and this was plans announced in December, that Hyundai Motor and SNK were building a plant valued at between $4 million and $5 billion in Bartow County, Georgia. Another electric vehicle plant, this one in Jefferson Township, Ohio, at $3.5 billion by Honda and LG Solutions. We had a large mass transit rail project that broke ground, the ceremonial groundbreaking broke ground in December of 2022, Metro North project in the Bronx. We had a very large mixed-use project in Apex, North Carolina, a $3 billion, and that's RxR's Viridia mixed-use project. Frisco, Texas, which has seen a ton of activity outside the Dallas area, had a December 2002 groundbreaking for the mixed-use development. That's valued at about $3 billion. Burlington, Kansas announced a semiconductor plant in February that should be good for $1.9 billion. And that's the third either semiconductor plant or EV battery plant that's been announced in Kansas over the past year. Sacramento announced plans in February for a $1.3 billion expansion of the airport there. Sandston, Virginia, had announced plans for two $500 million segments of a Facebook data center, and that was back in December 2022. Also had another data center groundbreaking, this one in Elk Grove Village in Illinois, the Prime Data Center campus, which is $1 billion. And in Memphis, a large expansion of hospital and office for the St. Jude's Research Hospital, which is a huge employer down in the Memphis area. And that is both for a hospital and new offices. The construction permits were filed for that in February in 2023. We have seen a ton of airport construction over the past couple of years. And we just mentioned as the largest projects that I found, the JFK expansion, Sacramento's expansion there. There were also some fairly large expansion projects at BWI, Baltimore. Construction was expected to start late in the year, $332 million expansion there. We have a expansion project underway in Spokane, $150 million at the Spokane International Airport. Out at the Fresno Yosemite International Airport, the expansion project, federal grant money for it was announced in March, just a few days ago in March. That's $127 million total value construction. And in Grand Rapids, Michigan, is now underway. The Gerald R. Ford International Airport announced $110 million expansion. Surprisingly, I also found some fairly large office projects that were either broke ground or some plans were announced in Omaha, Nebraska, which has seen quite a bit of construction in the downtown area there near the old market and down toward the event center and the baseball stadium. This one here, 44-story headquarters building, $600 million broke ground in January. Milwaukee also has had a lot of activity downtown. Northwestern Mutual has announced a $500 million office tower, and groundbreaking is possible later in 2023. Richmond had a fairly sizable project break ground in January, according to Construction.com. That's the CoStar Group corporate campus. Philadelphia, very big project. I'd like to see this one. In February, it's on the Drexel University campus. It's quite a bit of things going to be built there. This particular project, the Sparks Therapeutics Gene Therapy Innovation Center, $570 million, broke ground in February. I believe there's also some classroom and some other construction going on there right near Center City in Philadelphia. It looks like a really interesting and a very large project. In Salt Lake City, which has gotten a lot of notoriety over the past couple of years for the massive expansion of the airport there, they had an office project there entered the planning stage, the Granary Lab and Office Building, $211 million. The other project of note, I couldn't get an exact contract value for this, but in New Orleans, something very interesting. It's the industrial and office project within NASA's Mission Assembly Facilities. I can't imagine what kind of work they're doing there, but it kind of caught my eye that both an office and a factory was going to be built there in New Orleans. Apparently one of the bigger projects that city has seen on the office side in quite some time. Kind of rounding out our look at some of the specific construction segments that we saw the most activity in, it was certainly data centers, which has been obvious. You've heard us talk a lot about data centers and these podcast over the last couple of years, and certainly they seem to be still gathering steam. Although I have to admit, I am starting to see more reports from the local communities where data center plans are announced that they're having some concerns about the amount of water usage that these centers employ. And that seems to be an issue. Occasionally, I think I've even heard about some noise issues that people seem to be concerned with. We mentioned the 2 segments of the Facebook data center in Sandstone, Virginia. Also, we mentioned the Elk Grove Village. Some other projects that I was able to find were in Hilliard, Ohio. A data center broke ground in January for Amazon, $515 million. Sterling, Virginia, which is right in that data center belt west of DC. Vantage Data Center for $500 million. Westfield, Massachusetts, data center there for $325 million. And in Illinois, entered the planning stage, a $275 million data center called the Illinois District Data Center. That wraps up our podcast today. I apologize. I know it's a little bit longer than usual, but I had a lot of news to get through, and I hope it was all of value to you. Special thanks again to the folks from Champion Fiberglass for sponsoring this series of Electrical Economy podcasts for 2023. Please contact me if there's any other type of economic data you'd like us to cover in these podcasts. Our next presentation will be on March the 20th. Until then, hope you get your Final Four picks in. I hope be happy, be healthy. I look forward to talking with you in a couple weeks.